Hey everyone, and welcome back to Migratory Alert. You know, so many of us dream about it, right? Selling the car, packing a couple of suitcases, and heading off to some amazing place overseas. We see the pictures online, maybe watch a few videos. Beautiful beaches in Thailand. Charming old cities in France. Bustling markets in Mexico. And often, a big part of that dream is the idea that life will be cheaper. Significantly cheaper than back home in the States. You hear stories, maybe from a friend who visited Portugal or parts of Southeast Asia, talking about incredibly low rent or dirt-cheap street food, and your mind starts racing. Wow, I could live like royalty in Bali for what my tiny apartment costs in California way, or I could finally afford to work less and actually live more in Spain. But hold on a second. Before you book that one-way ticket based on a few appealing numbers, we need to talk. We need to have a real conversation about something I call the expat cost of living shock.
Because while, yes, some things might be cheaper in Lisbon or Bangkok, the real cost, the day-to-day, month-to-month cost, can hit you like a ton of bricks if you're not prepared, even in supposedly affordable destinations, and especially in places known to be expensive like Switzerland or Singapore. It's not about being negative, folks. It's about being realistic. It's about making sure that dream move to Italy or Australia doesn't turn into a financial nightmare because you were blindsided by expenses you never even considered. Today, we're diving deep into the hidden costs, the unexpected budget busters that trip up so many Americans when they move abroad. We're going beyond that tempting rent figure and looking at the whole picture. Because knowing this stuff before you go, that's how you make an informed decision, not just an emotional one. Stick around, because this might just save you a whole lot of money and heartache. Okay, let's start with the big one, housing. This is usually the number that hooks people. You hop online, maybe check a site like Numbeo, which is a great starting point, definitely use it, and you see rents listed for apartments in places like Berlin or Medellin that look unbelievably low compared to New York or San Francisco. And yeah, sometimes the base rent is lower. But here's where the shock often begins, hitting differently depending on the location. First off, agent fees. Back home, the landlord usually pays the agent's fee, but this cost often falls on you, the renter, in many parts of the world. Think about places like Germany or Japan, where it's standard practice for the renter to pay a hefty finder's fee or commission, sometimes called provision, or Maklergebühr in Germany, which can easily be 1 or even 2 months' rent plus tax. Even in parts of the UK, letting agent fees charged to tenants used to be common, though regulations have changed things somewhat. Still, always verify up front. Imagine finding a place for $1,000 a month in Munich. Sounds okay, right? Then, bam, you could owe the agent another $2,000 plus up front. That's a huge chunk of change right at the start. You need to specifically ask or research, who pays the agent fee here? Don't assume. Second, deposits and upfront rent. We're used to maybe first month's rent and a security deposit equal to 1 month's rent. Overseas, especially in competitive rental markets like London, Paris, Tokyo, Sydney, or Zurich. Get ready for potentially steeper requirements. It's not uncommon to need 2 or even 3 months' rent as a security deposit, Caution in Germany, caution in France, plus the first month's rent. So that $1,500 month apartment in Paris suddenly requires you to fork over $6,000 before you even get the keys. Some cultures, like Japan, traditionally, even have concepts like key money, reikin, which is essentially a non-refundable gift to the landlord, sometimes equal to 1 to 2 months' rent, just for the privilege of moving in. Definitely research local customs for your target city. Third, utilities, setup and deposits. Think you just move in and flip the switch? Not always. You might face setup fees for electricity, water, gas, and internet. Plus, utility companies, particularly in places where credit history isn't easily transferable, like potentially in Spain or Italy, for newcomers, might require their own deposits from foreigners. These little fees can add up to hundreds of dollars right at the beginning. Fourth, landlord responsibilities might differ. In the U.S., landlords handle most major repairs. Laws vary wildly. In Germany, for example, apartments often come completely bare, sometimes without even kitchen cabinets or light fixtures, which the tenant has to buy and install. And figuring out who fixes a leaky faucet or appliance can be a contractual detail you need to scrutinize, unlike the general expectations back home. Read your lease very carefully. Fifth, hidden fees and taxes. Are there condo fees, charges in France, Hausgeld in Germany? In the UK, you'll likely be responsible for council tax, which can be a significant monthly bill based on property value, completely separate from rent. Is mandatory renter's liability insurance, Haftpflichtversicherung, required, as is common in Germany? So that cheap apartment in Berlin, or even that expensive one in London. Once you factor in agent fees, massive upfront payments, utility setups, potentially buying your own kitchen, council tax, and other fees, the actual cost of just getting settled can be thousands more than you budgeted for based on that initial rent figure. You need to dig deeper than the classified ads. Check expat forums, understand local laws, talk to people on the ground. All right, staying with the home theme, let's talk utilities. We Americans are often spoiled with relatively stable costs, maybe included water or cheap natural gas. Overseas, it's often a shocker. Electricity. This is often a big one. Rates per kilowatt hour can be significantly higher, especially on islands like in the Caribbean or Hawaii. Yes, even within the U.S. Or places heavily reliant on imported fuel like Japan or many parts of Europe. And climate matters. Running AC constantly in tropical-size Singapore or Dubai will yield eye-watering bills compared to moderate U.S. climates. Moving to Scandinavia or the UK. Heating costs in winter, especially in charming but drafty older buildings, can be astronomical. Don't assume your California energy usage translates to similar bills in Stockholm. Research average utility costs for the specific climate and housing type. Water. Often metered everywhere outside the U.S., and sometimes surprisingly expensive, like reportedly in parts of Australia. Those long showers will cost you. Internet and mobile. Getting reliable, high-speed internet isn't always cheap or easy. While places like South Korea boast amazing speeds, in parts of Germany or Australia, getting fast connections, especially outside major cities, can be slower and pricier than expected. Bundled deals might be different. Mobile plans in places like Canada can be notoriously more expensive than comparable U.S. plans. Check coverage and data costs carefully. Gas. Is it piped natural gas? Or do you have to buy and replace heavy propane tanks? Bombonas in Spain. This is common in many parts of Europe and Latin America, and adds a chore and variable cost. Trash collection.
sometimes included in local taxes, like council tax in the UK, sometimes a separate fee you need to arrange and pay for, as can be the case in parts of Italy. The key takeaway for utilities? Assume nothing is like back home. Try to find realistic monthly estimates from expats in Madrid, Melbourne, or Munich. Check expat forums or Facebook groups for practical info. Okay, visions of wandering through vibrant local markets in Mexico City or Marrakesh, right? Local, seasonal food is often cheaper, but the overall grocery bill might surprise you, especially in developed countries. Imported goods. Missing your Kraft mac and cheese, Skippy peanut butter, or Dunkin' coffee in London, Tokyo, or Rome. Get ready for serious sticker shock. American brands are luxury imports, often costing double or triple. Relying on local substitutes is key, but that taste of home will hit your wallet hard. Specific dietary needs. Finding gluten-free, vegan, or other specialized products can be challenging and expensive outside major cosmopolitan hubs, though it's improving. Don't expect the massive variety and competitive pricing you see at Trader Joe's or Whole Foods everywhere. General grocery costs. Some countries are just plain expensive for groceries, period. Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, Singapore, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand consistently rank high for grocery costs. Even if rent seems manageable, your food bill could blow your budget. Sales tax, VAT. Remember that VAT, GST included in the shelf price in most countries, like the UK, France, Australia, is often much higher, 15 to 25%, than US sales tax. So while the price is final, the tax bite is bigger. Don't budget based solely on cheap street food in Thailand. Factor in pricey imports, research costs if you have dietary needs, and be aware of the generally high cost of groceries in places like Zurich or Oslo. Use Numbeo. Check local supermarket websites like Tesco in the UK, Carrefour in France, Woolworths in Australia. How you get around can drastically impact your budget. Owning a car. In many places, this is a massive expense. Purchase price/import tax. Think. Singapore, where the certificate of entitlement needed to even own a car can cost more than the car itself. Import taxes in many European and Asian countries make cars incredibly expensive compared to the US. Gas prices. Gas in Europe, like the Netherlands, Italy, UK, is notoriously expensive, often double or more per gallon than in the US. Insurance and maintenance can be costly, especially finding parts mechanics for American cars abroad. Licensing. Converting your license can be a costly hassle in places like Japan, or require retesting in countries like Germany or the UK. City driving. Add congestion charges in London, strict emission zones in many German cities, and expensive parking everywhere. Public transportation, often excellent in major hubs like Tokyo, London, Paris, or Berlin. But daily commuting adds up. A monthly pass for London's tube covering multiple zones is a significant expense. Relying solely on taxis or ride shares in cities where public transport isn't 24/7, like maybe parts of Lisbon or Rome, late at night gets costly fast. Research is key. Look up government sites for vehicle import taxes. Check expat forums for the real cost of owning a car in Dublin or Amsterdam.
Understand the public transport fares and monthly pass options in your target city. This is a huge one. Americans often hear about free universal health care in Canada or the UK NHS and assume coverage. It's more complex for non-citizens. Eligibility. You might not qualify immediately or ever, depending on your visa. Canada typically requires you to be a permanent resident and fulfill provincial residency periods. Initial entry to many Schengen area countries in Europe requires proof of private health insurance. Mandatory private insurance. Many countries. Germany, the Netherlands, Australia, for certain visas, require foreigners to have specific levels of private health insurance, which can cost hundreds or thousands monthly. Even in countries with public options, you might need private insurance initially or for visa compliance. Public system limitations. Even if you qualify for the NHS in the Aussie, UK, or provincial care in Canada, be prepared for potentially long wait times for specialists and non-urgent procedures. This reality often pushes people towards using private options if they can afford it. In Australia's public system, Medicare, there can still be gap payments for doctors or specialists that you pay out of pocket. Coverage gaps. Dental care is often not covered by public systems, a separate expense in the UK, Canada, Australia, etc. Getting specific U.S. medications might require special importation or finding costly alternatives in France or Japan. Emergency evacuation. Crucial anywhere, but especially vital if moving to a country with less developed healthcare. Ensure your insurance covers evacuation back to the U.S. or a major medical hub like Singapore or Germany. Don't assume healthcare is sorted. Research requirements for your visa in Spain, Portugal, or New Zealand. Get quotes from expat health insurance providers. Understand the public versus private reality in places like Canada, or the UK. The joys of paperwork. Setting up life abroad involves bureaucracy and fees. Visas. Application, renewal fees for visas in the UK, Australia, or Schengen countries can be substantial. Add costs for mandatory medical exams or police checks. Lawyers. Navigating the carte de séjour process in France or residency permits in Italy might necessitate an expensive immigration lawyer. Translations. Official translations needed everywhere for vital documents. Registration. Registering your address, Anmeldung in Germany, is mandatory and sometimes involves small fees or just bureaucratic time. Check official immigration websites for Canada, Australia, Germany, etc. for current fee schedules. This shocks many Americans. Moving abroad does not end your U.S. tax obligations. Dual filing. You'll likely file taxes in both the U.S. and your new country, whether it's France, Japan, or Mexico. Expat tax professionals. You'll need specialists familiar with U.S. expat rules, FEIE, FTC, and the local tax system, e.g., UK's HMRC rules, Canada, CRA rules. Their services aren't cheap. Budget this annually. Local taxes. Be aware of high income tax rates in places like Scandinavia, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, or Western Europe, Belgium, France, Germany, plus potential wealth taxes or high property taxes that might apply depending on your situation. The IRS website, Publication 54, is your starting point for U.S. rules. Factor in annual professional tax prep fees. Beyond the big categories, there's the small stuff. Bank fees, international transfer fees, ATM fees, currency conversion markups, costly when moving money from the U.S. to Spain, Thailand, etc. Electronics. Replacing 110V US appliances with 220s, 240V versions needed in Europe, Australia, Asia, etc. Trips home. Flying back to the States from Australia or New Zealand is a massive expense. Don't underestimate this. Lifestyle inflation. Feeling richer initially in Portugal or Mexico might lead to overspending. Be mindful. So, what's the bottom line? Moving abroad can be incredible. But the cost of living isn't just one number found online. It's a complex equation. The shock comes when US-based assumptions hit the realities of Germany, Japan, Australia, or even seemingly cheaper places like Portugal or Colombia. Costs are distributed differently. You might save on rent in Berlin, but get hit by utility costs and buying a kitchen. Healthcare might seem cheaper conceptually in Canada, but involves wait times or initial private insurance costs. Groceries might seem okay until you crave expensive American imports in Paris. The best advice? 1. Research granularly. Dig into all categories for your specific target city, e.g., Valencia versus Madrid, Chiang Mai versus Bangkok. 2. Use multiple sources. Numbeo, official government sites, immigration, tax, health, expat forums, for patterns, not just anecdotes. Talk to relocation specialists if possible. 3. Talk to people on the ground. Connect with Americans living there now. Ask about their actual monthly expenses. 4. Budget conservatively. Create a detailed budget. Then add a significant buffer, 20–30% plus, for the first 6 months. Unexpected costs will happen, whether you're moving to London or by Lima. Moving abroad is massive. Going in with eyes wide open about the true potential costs in your chosen destination is key to success. Phew. Okay, that was a lot. Hopefully, adding those specific examples gives you a clearer, more practical picture. This isn't about scaring you away from any specific place, but about empowering you with realistic knowledge for wherever you might consider. If you found this information helpful, if it gave you something to think about, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button down below. It really helps the channel reach more people. And if you want more reality checks and practical advice for Americans thinking about life abroad, make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Got your own cost of living shock story from moving abroad? Maybe related to one of these places or somewhere else? Or maybe a hidden cost I didn't mention? Share it in the comments below. Let's help each other out.
And definitely, share this video with any friends or family members who are dreaming of that overseas move. Thanks so much for watching. Stay informed, stay realistic, and I'll see you in the next video.